Hello all, welcome to Week 6, Race and Ethnicity. How we might explain the overrepresentation of different groups in the criminal justice system by Pantiwa and Givany. Today our presentation will outline the key terms, historical construction of ideas of race and ethnicity, preconceived ideas, individual and institutional discrimination, consequences of racial and ethnic inequality, the view of psychological perspectives, current issues, and the answer to this week's topic questions. To help us understand a bit more about this week's topic, we will explain to you some key terms. Overrepresentation, for example, groups who were represented in excessive or disproportionately large numbers. Some groups, and most notably some races, may be overrepresented, and others may be underrepresented. Criminal justice system is basically court, correction, and police. This is the system of law enforcement, the bar, the judiciary, corrections, and probation that is directly involved with apprehension, prosecution, defense, sentencing, incarceration, and supervision of those suspected of or charged with criminal offences. Different groups in this week's topic refer to race, culture, religion, and country of origins. Ethnicity is the concept of differences and similarities that exist in communities in terms of language, social celebration, belief, style of clothing, and way of life. And finally, race, which is a group of persons related by common grounds. Any of the traditional divisions of humankind, the commonest being the Caucasian, Asian, Mongoloid, and Negro. A group of people of common ancestry distinguished from others by physical characteristics such as hair type, color of eyes and skin, stature, etc. Background of Australian social structure. Australia is made up of more than 200 nationalities, as shown by the census data collected in 2006. Although the majority of the population are born in Australia, only 50% are claimed that they have Australian ancestry. The 2006 census shows that at least 40% of the population has at least one parent who was born overseas. The Whitlam government in 1973 has removed race as a factor in Australians' immigration policies. Later, in 1975, the Fraser government made some changes to the policy by increasing in the allowed number and percentage of migrants from non-European countries. These two alterations aim to give migrants a chance to become Australian citizens regardless of their country or origin. If you take a look at this graph, you will clearly see that the majority of the Australian population is made up of migrants from other countries. You will also notice that since 2003, the migration levels have been increasing quite dramatically. Preconceived ideas. Some people assume that refugees that arrive on Australian shores by boat are queue jumpers, terrorists, and criminals. Aboriginal people have suffered labelling such as dark-skinned, despairing, alcoholic, lazy, low education, and as having lack of care for their younger generation. Individual and institutional discrimination. Discrimination can happen individually and institutionally. Individual discrimination is defined as the act of a person against another person because of their physical appearances, skin and hair colors, etc. For example, a person refuses to serve someone because of their color. Institutional discrimination is made by secondary rather than primary characteristics. This discrimination is based on such things as level of education, employment history, experience, etc. Examples of institutional discrimination can often be seen in the employment processes. Consequences of racial and ethnic inequality. According to this week's reading, it is evident that inequality in minorities created more crime activities in our society. The youths brought before the court reportedly have low level of education and live with parents that are unemployed or have only part-time employment and lack a skill for work. Next, we move on to our 4 key theories. Conflict theory. Conflict theory has been used at a macro level of analysis to study the competition for resources, how the rich control the poor, and how materialism has divided people in our society. The minority live in poverty and enjoy inequality and want to get rich fast, thus they engage in criminal activities. In order to become wealthy and accepted in society, they will do whatever it takes to increase their wealth and well-being. Functionalist theory. This theory also analyzes social issues at a macro level. This theory is regarded as the oldest theory. However, it is relevant in today's society. Living in a multicultural society that has over 200 different nationalities combined, with different cultures, beliefs, and religions. Different ways of life has divided people who live in the community and created conflicts between groups of people. The changes in society due to migration, population movement, and world affairs have weakened the norm in our society, thus having an impact on our social structures. Symbolic interactionism perspective. This school of thought uses a micro level of analysis, how a person could have preconceived ideas of others during face-to-face interactions. Stereotyping someone because of their looks or their culture, background, economic statuses, etc. But how could this symbolic interactionism theories be applied to this week's topic? The preconceived ideas of certain races. For example, after the 9/11 attack, the Muslim people were treated unjustly because of their race and their appearance. The assumption towards them was that they were terrorists and criminals. And finally, feminist perspective. This theory uses both macro and micro levels of analysis. Feminist theory believes that inequalities in male-dominant and women-subordinate society has created social problems. Male-dominant roles in society, such as in the Islamic community, where a man can have more than one wife and punishing their wives is seen as normal. However, in Australian society, we see this kind of behaviour as a crime and we do not tolerate it. A person can be charged with domestic violence, rape, and assault for this sort of behaviour. The implication of ethnic and national identity. Muslim women were assaulted in suburbs in Melbourne and Sydney, and mosques were attacked after the 9/11 attack. Across Australian cities in 2004, hundreds of thousands of people marched to support the reconciliation between black and white Australians. The Cronulla riot in 2005, conflict between young Lebanese and young Australian men. Some believed that the riots revealed an underlying racist problem in Australia's modern society. Lack of understanding of others is one of the main factors that make a person have preconceived ideas of others. When a person assumes that a certain race will do or not do a certain thing. For example, someone may believe that white men cannot jump or the Asian person cannot play basketball. Some people still prefer to practice their own way of life, and some find that it is difficult to practice the Australian way of life. The report of the Law Reform Commission of Western Australia has concluded that there appears to be structural bias issues in the criminal justice system, This report claimed that when a person is of one ethnic minority, the person is more likely to be handed down a sentence than a person of non-ethnic minority. Alienation from the criminal justice system. As one Aboriginal commentator has stated, "When I think of the legal system, I think of it as an enemy. It is not there for my benefit. It has imposed gross injustices on my people and crushed my people's way of life." This quote demonstrates how minorities in Australia, such as Aboriginal people, view the Australian criminal justice system. Gang rape. In reference to this week's article reading, Gang Rape in Sydney. In 2001 and 2002, reportedly there were a number of gang rapes in Bankstown and southwest Sydney suburbs. This article concludes that the media sensationalised the event and claimed that the gang rapes were triggered by racist issues. However, the real motivations cannot be identified. There were other issues that contributed to the gang rape case. It pointed out that this minority group has been living in poverty, has no or low education levels, and has difficulty in gaining employment. Inequality is the main issue that needed to be addressed. This report also stressed that we as a society should look into social functions as a whole rather than focus only on individuals and the minority problems. Now we move on to the answers to this week's topic questions. Societal norms have weakened, as living in a multicultural society has become a challenge for some, as they have to adapt to a new way of life. The family structures have also weakened along with social structures, and this has a profound effect on the individual and multicultural society. Inequality in society was the starting point of criminal activities. Minorities can no longer endure living under poverty, therefore they are willing to take risks and pursue the wrong path to reach the so-called American dream. Belief that males are dominant and women subordinate has become an issue in some cultures that still prefer to practice their own way of life. Domestic violence issues, rapes, and sexual abuses. To label and ostracize a person or group creates hatred and conflict. This makes a person feel excluded from the rest of the community, and when this situation persists, it leads to hate crimes and cross-culture crimes in the society. Alienation from the criminal justice system, for example, Indigenous people, believe the common law is not justified when In conclusion, no one is above the law and no one has an excuse to break the law. However, the circumstances that a person is in has much influence on their behaviour. Thank you for your time.